Genesis 46, which is what we're going to be looking at today. Wonderful reading. And I get so many things from that. And to be fair, this morning I was thinking, so I've looked at it in so many different ways, and you can take it from so many different strands. So what I chose to do instead, when I sometimes you're sleeping but you're actually thinking of things. Well, that was what was going on with me last night. Instead of fully dreaming, I was actually thinking about, okay, how am I going to? So there's three areas that you can take this from. This is what I think. The first part of it for me is Jacob's final encounter with the Lord. And there we see that in the first couple of verses, that God speaks to Jacob, to comfort Jacob, to say, don't worry, Jacob, I'm going to be with you. And so that's Jacob's first encounter with, not first encounter, his final, encounter with the Lord. And then the second part I was thinking of that I can take this from is the count, the genealogy of Jacob's entire family that goes with him to Egypt. And thirdly, Jacob's reunion with Joseph. Now, I don't know how much time I'm going to have, so just in case I go over, someone can just wave to me and just say, Andrea, you've got 5 minutes. So does anyone mind doing that for me? That would be really helpful. So we're going to look at the first thing then, which is Genesis 46 and the first couple of verses, which I think are amazing. And I'm going to need my glasses for this because I've taken up a different Bible, which are much smaller words. And the first one says, so Jacob set out for Egypt with all his possessions. And note that God speaks to Jacob again in something that links him and his son Joseph. What is that? How does God speak to Jacob to reassure Jacob that everything is okay? It's okay to go into Egypt. He speaks to Jacob through a dream. This isn't the first time he's done this with Jacob, and he does it again. God does it again. He speaks to Jacob through a dream and reassures Jacob it's okay to go into Egypt. I have some plans here, and your seed, as I promised you, will continue to multiply there. So I thought that was really interesting. How many of us have had a reassurance from God that when we're about to do something, or before we're about to do something, he gives us a dream, or he sends someone to reassure us, perhaps with a dream or perhaps a similar dream? Has anyone had that experience before? Oh, don't go silent on me now, Luton.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'd love to one day maybe hear that and explore that. It'd be lovely to hear people's testimonies or something about how they feel that God has spoken to them or directed them through maybe someone else, or even directly. I know people don't often talk about that so much anymore because we attach that with, don't we? When we say that God spoke to me and God told me, people take that very cautiously. But I love this because I think it's wonderful that Jacob takes God really seriously. It's not the first time that God has spoken to him in a dream. This is another time, and this is his final encounter with God speaking to him to reassure him. So why was Jacob nervous about going to Egypt? What made him nervous? Luton, talk to me this morning. What do you think made Jacob nervous about going to Egypt? One of the things, actually, and this was something that, because I was thinking about the culture of the day, and we know that the Egyptians were the leading, what country then, if you like, in those times. They kind of ruled the world. Their knowledge about science, their knowledge about architecture that we're still trying to figure out today. Isn't that incredible? We're still trying to figure out how the pyramids were made, for example. No one can quite work that out. People have a replica of it, but not quite worked out how they managed to put the final stones in and how they managed to fully construct it. So Egypt still remains a mystery until today in terms of its sciences and lots of other things, but how Egypt has influenced the world even today in so many things, in so many different ways. So Egypt was the ruling nation at that time, and it ruled for thousands of years. It had a lot of influence. So why was he afraid to go into Egypt? I thought, could it be because they served so many gods? I mean, we get an account from Moses, which is many 400 years later, and I say that 400 word intentionally. So we hear that the Egyptians, we understand that the Egyptians served all kinds of gods, all manner of gods. And I guess this is another reason why the Israelites, or later to be called the Israelites, the Israel people who are Jacob, because that's the name that God gave him, Israel, we understand that they only had how many gods? One God, one God. But the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians served, let me see, they had the cat, they had the dog, they had the snake, they had the dog on the human body, they had, and we can go on. They had so many. Of course, Pharaoh himself thought he was a god. He served the sun, and he thought he was connected with the sun and the moon. Isn't that funny too? That comes up in anyway. That's part of Joseph's dream too. So I'm going to say. So those are the reasons that I felt that that Jacob was afraid to go into Egypt. He didn't want his family to be submerged into serving other gods, and perhaps he knew his family well enough. Or could it be, as my husband highlighted to me, could it be what God had said in Genesis chapter 15, verse 12 to 13? I wonder if someone can read that for me very quickly just now. Could it be that that Jacob had that in mind? That is someone able to read that to me just very quickly? Genesis chapter 15. Verse 12 and 13. Someone able to read that very quickly?
And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age.
Wow. So, what do you make out of that verse? Because it doesn't come directly into Genesis 46, but it comes earlier, and this is what God says to Abram. And that was when the first promise was made anyway. So I wonder if Jacob might have remembered what his grandfather had told him about this. And could this possibly have made him a little bit more cautious, shall we say, into going into Egypt? We don't know. So, but it was something, sorry?
I think also that because God had told he had told Isaac not to go to Egypt. Maybe that was also one of the, because of the experiences, his great grandfather, no, his father had it. Father had in Egypt. So I those are some of the things I think.
And I tend to agree with you, Sister Flo, that maybe that was some of the reasons behind why Jacob felt a bit cautious. But clearly there was something about the how Egypt was able to absorb somebody into their culture quite quickly. Or could it also, in terms of serving different gods, but also Egypt looked on anyone who was outside of Egypt as a foreigner, as strange. So are we hinting? Am I hinting at a bit of probably racism there, discrimination? Because later on in this same chapter, shepherds are also considered an abomination to the Egyptians. So it's like, are they a bit snotty people? They sound a little bit snotty to me. Why would you look on shepherds as an abomination? Why would strangers seem so, a misfit to the Egyptians? The Egyptians also had another culture of being smooth, and the Israelites didn't, did they? They were quite happy with growing their hair. And the Egyptians were different to that. They had a smooth skin. They didn't really want to have hair around them. The hair that was on them was actually false. They shaved and they did all manner of things like that. So there are lots and lots of different things that we can maybe connect with that. But clearly there seems to me a bit of discrimination as well. So
just a point there, Andrea. You know, the people we see in Egypt now are not the same people. These are Arab people. But the
I'm
people
so glad you said that.
Those people are pharaohs.
I'm so glad you said that. So we also need to know that Egypt is in Africa, people. It isn't Europe. And I rest my case here. So that's up to you to explore that, to have a look at that. But that is, you know, the River Nile was a very significant place, and it runs throughout Africa into East Africa as well. So it's a very important river, and it changes into, sorry, the name has slipped me now, but that river is quite a significant river that runs through a good length of Africa. So I wanted the second thing I wanted to focus on then was also, so we talked a little bit about then why Jacob might have been fearful in going into Egypt. But the wonderful thing is the genealogy. So we know now that 60 is 70 people. So that's a lot of people that actually traveled into Egypt. So the Lord comforted Jacob to say, do go, because I'm going to be with you and I'm going to bless you there. And what's more, you are going to see your son Joseph, and Joseph will close your eyes. So in other words, you're going to die in peace because you're going to be in the arms of your son. So the wonderful part that I like next is the reunion, because that is something that Jacob has with his son Joseph. Now that would have been awkward for the rest of the family, the brothers in particular, and perhaps their children, because then everybody's heard about this now, how awkward everything was, that actually they conspired to get rid of Joseph. But now this is the happy side of this. This is the reunion that is taking place. So how awesome is this? Because the Bible tells us, as we read in an earlier verse, that when Joseph meets his father, which is the later verses in verse 46, that Joseph wept on his father's neck, and the Bible tells us a long time. And I just thought that was amazing, because he's not just saying, and Joseph wept on his father's neck and his father wept on his neck, but Joseph wept on Jacob's neck a long time. Can you imagine all those years of not seeing your father and your father not seeing you? He thinks, remember, that Joseph is dead. This is many years, isn't 5, 10 years that's passed. It's a number of years. So a lot of tears are being cried on Jacob's neck from Joseph, because these tears are of oppression, of the what he has gone through with his brothers, with his family, not seeing his beloved father, having lost a mother. So he was in Egypt, he was like an orphan in Egypt. And I hadn't actually thought of it that way. That, yeah, Joseph went through so much. So those tears that he cried on his father's neck were for a number of reasons. Aren't we glad that God has our tears? That he knows every tear that we cry, that he sees them, he hears them, and he knows what they're about, and then he's interested. So when we go through our own struggles, our own persecution, our own times in Egypt where we feel enslaved, we feel disempowered, that we can turn to God and we can cry our tears. Now, we might not be able to physically yet cry on the Lord's neck, but we can cry in front of him, knowing that he understands our tears and that he can embrace us. He can send his Holy Spirit to comfort us. That's what Jesus did. So I'm going to end with that. I'm going to end with the reunion that Jacob has with his son Joseph. And there's going to be such a time for us where we're reunited with our Heavenly Father who created us and our loved ones. And I'm going to end with that.